Welcome to a special crossover edition of the Two World Podcast. We're joined today with a special guest, and I'll let him say his name.
Sean DeHaven.
Thank you for joining us, Sean. It's an honor to be here with you, and as usual, I'm Jacob Dotson, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Barney.
He doesn't use the same catchphrase.
I know.
It's a whole other word. It's a whole other world here.
Yes, it's apparently two worlds.
Two worlds coming together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Barney and I, when his alter ego is on another podcast. Which one started first, by the way?
Yours.
Right. The English all over the place did. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm sure we were the first podcast. Yeah.
I did have I had a deer in the headlights moment on the first episode of the Two World Podcast, where I did say, you guys can go ahead and call me Barney. And I saw Jacob starting to laugh a little bit, and I was like, oh yeah, I think I kind of need to work on coming up with something new for this other one.
Overlaps, you know.
Right. Yeah.
You're just trying to push those T-shirts, aren't you?
When you've got a good catchphrase, you hang on
I'm
to
Sean DeHaven, and Barney and I also run a podcast called
English All Over the Place.
And it's called English All Over the Place. For those of you who might have trouble understanding that, that was one of my sons. Boy, I really had to splice that thing together. Right. But we are a podcast under the guise of teaching English. But really, it's just a great excuse to get together and talk about fun things and hopefully give some advanced English students some interesting things to listen to, and some other people to listen to it too. So we are open to anybody listening, you know. Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of...
Yeah, and we do as...
Oh, please, go ahead.
We're a bit behind, but in general, we do even have materials to help people, right? Make sure that they're keeping up with their
the
English
first season.
studies.
We have quizzes and transcripts. We have fallen behind on the transcripts because that costs money and it takes a lot of time actually to do. And since frankly we haven't seen a lot of use out of that, so we're just going to do the podcast for now. We're having so much fun doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Yes. And I believe one of our listeners is Jacob, actually.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I was going to say, for me, your podcast is also interesting for people who want to learn about Japanese culture, because there's quite a bit in there packed in between your segments about life in Japan.
If you're not aware, Barney, of course, is in Narita, Chiba, Japan right now. And I'm now in Tokyo. And Jacob is in Ohio, the very natural triangle of Worcester, Narita, and Tokyo.
You're right.
How many people are in Worcester, by the way? Is that 6,000? So
more than that. That's like 26.
Okay.
Yeah.
26. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's about the size of the town I'm living in right now. But
You're right.
Nice.
So, Jacob, please go ahead.
No. I think I just want to mention that the idea for this podcast, I think, emerged out of a common connection with Barney, and thinking about how Barney is podcasting on English All Over the Place. He's podcasting with the Two World Podcasts. So what is it like for us co-hosts of Barney working with him? What is it like for him working with us? And maybe later we can be quizzed on how well we listen to Barney as a co-host if he asks us some trick questions about things he's told us during the podcast, and see how well we retain that information. So not that would be pretty fun.
Right.
I think in general, I love how each podcast has its own ethos and feel, and I just love the playfulness of your podcasts and the banter and the fun that you have. I think too, it's interesting the intercultural aspect of the podcast, because that's a theme that's really huge for us, and it draws our attention in our conversations. But I just think it's interesting that you're living that every day, and it's another element that adds insight and wisdom, and
even inside our podcast.
Right.
You know, Barney is from the countryside in Ohio.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm from a suburb of Los Angeles. You know.
Yeah, it really is true that where we come from, what we've experienced, our our personalities, just because of how the areas where we grew up, I guess, impacts it a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I think I remember too. I know you had a guest from your former place of employment with you. I think, wasn't he? I think it was him. Did he say that when they met each of you respectively and your personalities, they were like, Sean's more of our typical, American that we think of. And Barney seemed a little bit more Japanese to us, or reserved. But Sean seems so. Even in other cultural contexts in Japan, your personalities are,
I am
received.
I am nothing if not reserved.
I know.
I am a wallflower.
Demure.
Yes. Yeah. Well, sometimes I joke that I speak American in Japanese. Because Japanese language is not, you can be direct, but they don't like to be direct. They like to, go around things and imply things. And I will go in your face and say in Japanese, hey, you're supposed to be talking to me, not, my wife who's speaking, because occasionally you'll get in a situation in Japan where you speak to somebody in Japanese and they will look to your wife or the Japanese person with you and speak to them. And you're like, excuse me, I just spoke to you in Japanese. You speak to me. It hasn't happened in a long time. So,
Right.
But boy, the fear in their faces, kind of entertaining. Sorry.
Yeah, it's strange, and I don't know, Jacob, if you've had this experience since you've been traveling, and you speak a number of different languages, but I think it happened to Sean for sure, where we speak to someone in Japanese, and their brain doesn't tell them that we're speaking in Japanese, and they just automatically reply, "I don't speak English," and we're thinking to ourselves, "I just spoke to you in Japanese, actually," and it takes them a while to get their system kickstarted. And I don't know if you've had that kind of experience before.
Yeah, for sure.
Where I've
been to France a few times.
What languages do you speak?
Yeah, and I studied French in college, and I was a French minor, and visiting in Paris in particular. And I don't think it's quite the same phenomenon you're describing, but there are so many tourists in Paris that they just have any patience for an American. Even if they've studied French a lot, they just go straight to English. I shouldn't say everybody, but I've encountered it there.
I can understand that too a bit.
Yeah, sure. But then getting out in the French countryside and Normandy and different places, having time and space and talking with people and them taking time to really converse in French. And so part of that was an urban rural thing, but I could definitely see that happening. In fact, we had a guest who had taught English in China. This is a few weeks back for the Two World podcast, and she talked about going into stores when she first arrived and trying to speak in Chinese, and one of the shop owners saying, no, I don't speak English, and she's like, exactly what you said, but I'm speaking to you in Chinese. So,
right, that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
I know.
But it's kind of nice that you both know Japanese so well that you can break the stereotype, because probably for them, they're assuming, a person who looks this way does not know my language, but here you are standing as a counterpoint to that. No, I know it. I've taken time.
I'm standing pretty tall too.
Yeah, well, it was standing tall.
Looking down on him. I can speak Japanese. Right. I'm 2 meters tall and I can speak Japanese.
I know.
Well, I mean, even for me, I was a Japanese teacher in the United States before I came here. That's what my bachelor's was in. And after I lived in Japan for a long time, and I came back to the United States, and I taught Japanese for 5 years at a high school after getting a teaching credential. And then you'll still get somebody like, "Can you read kanji?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm a Japanese teacher." Okay. I passed the top level of the Japanese language test. So yeah, I can read kanji.
Right.
I can't write it anymore because I'm using a computer too much, but
Right, yeah. And a teacher in California too, they've got different standards.
Yes, they do. So your podcast generally takes a philosophical, religious kind of slant, right?
Yeah,
in general,
I think so. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the questions we ask, the whole image of the podcast Two Worlds Coming Together is meant to be broad enough that you can talk about intercultural experiences or relationships or two different areas and media and culture coming together. But we tend to often relate it to our own experience or faith, but it's not strictly always, in that framework. But
Jacob, how long have you known Barney?
Barney came home one time and he brought Yuma and Ayako, and actually his in-laws came, and we had a ceremony at our church to kind of dedicate Yuma, and that was a chance to really, that was 2016, wasn't it? Was that 2016, Barney, for that? So it was 2016, right before Christmas, or it was on Christmas that we had that ceremony.
On Christmas Day,
it was really special getting ready for that, getting to know Barney. And then soon after that, our congregation actually decided to pursue a sister church relationship with the congregation that Barney's connected with in Yachio. And so we wrote a letter and asking if they would be interested in that. And Barney was a liaison, and he helped us communicate with them. And
they said
no.
Maybe inwardly, but outwardly,
inner voice, no.
Outwardly they.
But we're Japanese, so we have to be polite.
Omotenashi. But they were very very positive, and wrote back, and so then it led to more collaboration with Barney, and then I was able to visit in Japan there during my sabbatical and spend time with Barney and get to know the sister church more. And then soon after that, they actually sent a person our way to Ohio. The son of the pastor came to visit us, and Barney was a tour guide for him, and that was just more time together. So
it's the son of a preacher man.
Yeah, exactly. So good reference. So that's my connection. Yeah. How about for you, Sean?
We first met at IUHW, a university in Narita, medical university, and we got along almost immediately because Barney is very good at overlooking my occasional rudeness and / humor, and he likes hockey, and it's very hard to find a hockey fan, anybody in Japan, much less somebody who's knowledgeable about it. I mean, I can't help it that he likes a loser team that will never win the Stanley Cup, but you can't pick and choose,
Right. That's part of the charm.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you a little bit about maybe your observations and working with Barney, some of his traits that you appreciate. For example, when I'm podcasting with him, I hear him say this phrase a lot, and I don't know if he's aware of it, but he says the phrase, I wonder. And I feel like he has a real a curiosity. When you're podcasting, I think it's really important to have a partner who's curious about things, because if you don't have somebody who listens well and has a curiosity, it could tend to be the conversation could be disjointed. You won't be building off of what each other says. But I think
no, I think because we already have a chemistry built from working together for 3 years, and we even worked on the same side of the office, with Hayasaka Sensei, who was a guest on one of our episodes, unwillingly probably, but we're like, no, you're going to be on our guest show. It's not a choice.
That was a great episode. I love that one.
Unhand me.
I enjoyed listening to it.
Yeah.
Please go back, listeners, and English all over the place, and listen to our earlier shows too. We talk about things like family trees and our hometowns and stuff like that. Very different places, very different background. But it's great to work with Barney. I don't remember any catch phrases. Maybe he would say often, "It all comes down to this." No.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
When we were playing miniature putter golf in the office occasionally, it's probably why we got fired. But it was worth it.
HR didn't say so. I asked if that's why they said.
You asked if there was.
No.
Are you insane?
Well, now we're glad that we did.
Was it the golf?
Why didn't you invite us?
Was it
Serves
Sean
you right.
hitting as far as he could down the hallway? But smashing that ping pong ball. But those are good memories. Playing all the so many holes, so many trick shots.
Oh yeah.
But it was so much fun. I forgot the question here. What was it like
that's
for
fine.
Working with Barney, was that the question?
Yeah. And I also wanted to turn the question around on Barney as well and say, Barney, have you noticed any qualities about us and partnering with us that stand out, or phrases we use, or aspects of how we partner in the podcasting enterprise?
I think that that's interesting. I never noticed about saying I wonder this or I wonder that, but I can hear that now. And actually today I didn't get this in the quiz because I wasn't self-aware enough, but I was trying to think, I wonder if there's some like kind of verbal tick or whatnot that I can say, what is Barney's verbal tick? And I thought, it all comes down to this. But, I think especially in the Two World podcast, me coming from not as deep of a background, like when you asked Jacob how we know each other, it was a while before I realized that Jacob and I are even the same age, because just kind of seeing him in his role, first and foremost, as a pastor, then just right away my mind thought, well, he's older than I am,
and you as a BMX bandit
than I am, right? Yes, right, yeah, right, yeah. So rad. Then getting to see that Jacob as a friend, and wow, we're the same age, but in our podcast I still I have so much to wonder because I don't have as much of a background, and I just hope that what I'm going to say next, I wonder this or I wonder that, if it makes sense.
You're trying to give yourself an out, just in case you sound like an idiot.
It's interesting.
Oh, well, that's why he's wondering, because he doesn't know.
I wonder.
Well, it's so interesting because, Barney, I don't encounter that phrase as a nervous tick at all or a sign of insecurity. I actually encounter it as an invitation or a kind of a springboard into something deeper. Like you ask a question that goes to something deeper about the topic we're talking about. Like I wonder, it normally leads to a period of like insight. And so I was meaning as a compliment. Yeah.
Yeah. And it really makes me really, really honored to hear that.
All right.
One thing that I noticed that maybe is a similarity between the two podcasts that I do is Sean and Jacob, both of you are such good speakers.
Thanks, Barney.
So especially when Jacob, when you and I were editing our audio before putting it into the podcast, and I thought,
sorry, can you get that so fast? Thank you.
I thought it was good timing, even still. I thought I have all of these ums.
Yeah.
And I realized, wow, Jacob, his speech is just really has a great flow, and it really has a great rhythm to it. And then, of course, with Sean, you can take sometimes when I stumble or when, maybe when we're threatening having some kind of silence or some kind of awkwardness, you pick it up so smoothly and just shepherd us. You get us right through, and so I think I never feel like I'm in like a diminished role or anything like that. I feel like our roles for both with Jacob and with Sean, it's just perfect complements to one another, like a Venn diagram.
No, hey, you're tying everything together. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, right.
Barney's in the middle. Barney's in the middle there. That Venn diagram. You're so small, though.
It's interesting when you said that about Sean shepherding you through when there's a moment of silence or whatever. There's a phrase that came to me that comes up in your podcast. He says, "This is live, people. This is live." Do you remember saying that, Sean? Yeah. If there's ever like a glitch or something, you're like, "This is live." Yeah, and it kind of is that shepherding. It's like, it's okay. This is playful. This is live.
Yes.
What you get. We're having fun.
Like I said before the podcast. Unprofessional. That's my. Keep it unprofessional.
Same here with ours. Yeah.
We try.
Yeah.
But it's a pleasure to work with Barney too, because he's a good person to bounce off of. He's very patient too, because basically I run the show, and I love getting input. I will cue him up because it's hard to have. You can't have two 50-50 hosts. It's very hard to know who's when you're dancing, who's leading, things like that. But you need each other. to make it work. You need somebody to bounce things off of, and you need somebody to have different opinions sometimes. And Barney certainly has. He's a contrarian many times. He knows. And I'm like, what? Yeah. Even in the way he types on his keyboard. You try and borrow his computer at work. And you're like, why can't I type on this keyboard? Oh, I use or something. What was he? Dvorak, yes. I'm like, why are you making this harder for yourself?
Sometimes you just got to be different.
Yeah. Well, just like, I can't even borrow your computer, But
there was a moment like that in
those differences
in your recent podcast when you talked about the James Bond film and Barney gave you his take, and you're like, what does that mean?
Oh yeah,
that was like
a confusing review, if ever
is that
you
a
heard one. Yeah.
good review? Because he loves James Bond. And I'm like, oh, he finally saw it. I'm like, okay, let's say the reaction for the podcast. Because he's like, Yeah, even during the podcast live, he's like, and this was a comic, you'd see like the ... in one square. I'm like, did you like it? It's like, it was a lot. Yeah. It was a lot to take in. I'm like, but those kind of reactions are great. And that's what makes a good show, I think. I'm
really grateful that you were open to doing this, Sean. Thanks for doing the crossover episode, and Barney, of course, thank you for being our co-host for respectively for each of us. So it's a joy working with you.
Well, we're doing an episode of English All Over the Place after this right now.
Are you seriously?
I hope you have some coffee. No, I'm not.
No.
Touche.
Right now, for the people who don't know, it's I believe it's 10:40 in the morning for Jacob. But it's 12:40 at night here in Japan.
Yeah.
What time is it in Narita?
That's just it. You wouldn't notice. Yeah. Right.
No.
No, we're having that just goes to show what good chemistry all three of us have.
Yes.
That we're not dogging our way through this. It was from the word go. It's been a lot of fun.
I could do a couple more shows right now, but the problem is going to be going to sleep after this.
I know.
Right, Barney, right.
I heard. Speaking of dogging your way through something.
Where was that dog? Was that in your...
Yeah, that's one of our dogs.
Oh, okay. What's his name?
That one was Jojo. It's a collie. That one. Here she comes.
Jojo, be quiet.
Yeah. Let's see if I can get her to... Jojo. Come here, Jojo.
Jojo. Right there. Don't knock over the camera. Oh, that's cool. Cute. What is it, Lassie?
Yeah.
Did Grandpa fall in the well?
No, it was Timmy.
She looks like Lassie, doesn't she?
Grandpa and Timmy.
Yes. I told him not to go by the well. Okay.
I know.
Well, Jacob, it's been a lot of fun being on the show, and if you ever want me back for another hour and a half long episode, I am more than willing.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Yeah, I was thinking actually that Sean would really be a good, not to make this going longer, but Sean really would be a good guest, I think, because he may not realize it, but he has a lot of good Mennonite qualities about him. He really has a heart for justice and for helping and serving. And and I really think that he would be, if we took him to the serious side of the Two World Podcast, I think he would be a very good guest one of these days.
I can't use my soundboard then. It's kind of hard to fit in Jive Turkey or something like that, But it is very nice to hear that. But I think these qualities should be universal, regardless of what religion you are. As a decent person who wants to live on a world with decent people, But it's great to hear that. If you want to do a serious show sometime, and I can still wake up at 11 o'clock at night. That's usually the time you do this? Is this usually the time?
Yeah, normally. But I have some flexibility, so if we needed to shift it, definitely could try a different time.
No, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I can do it on the train.
We're getting a lot of
I'm
background
doing a podcast
noise.
here. Yes. I know. It's atmosphere, ambience.
Well, I'm wondering if it would make sense, since this episode was about podcasting with Barney, if we give it to Barney to close our episode.
Oh.
Everyone everyone. We are very, very honored that you've joined us and stuck with us through this episode for the Two World Podcast and English all over the place.
All over the place.
Yeah, we hope that you maybe have had a lot of fun with us, and maybe you noticed some things that we haven't noticed about our dynamic together that you thought, oh yeah, that's probably why, another reason why their podcast is so good. So we're always willing to read your comments, hear you approach us in person, we're really thankful for your listening along with us.
It's been a lot of fun, guys. Thanks for sticking around to the end.
And until next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.